In this short video, I will explore indirect statements in Latin. What is an indirect statement? An indirect statement is a statement which reports indirectly what someone said or thought without quoting them directly. Lots of people say that an easy way to identify indirect statements is to search for a statement with the word "that" in it in English. If you would like to skim read this extract from John F. Kennedy's "We Choose to Go to the Moon" speech and spot any indirect statements, then pause the video now. I bet you're now not convinced by that method of simply spotting the word "that." I believe there to be no indirect statements in this passage. The word "that" can be used for other purposes. Okay, so that method didn't work. We have to check that in each instance of the word "that" an indirect statement is present. Take a quick look over the transcript of what I just said. Try to spot all of the indirect statements contained within. You can pause the video if you would like to. Again, I've highlighted the word "that" in each instance. I'll now highlight all of the indirect statements in blue. There are three indirect statements in this passage. The first contains the word "that," once for the indirect statement and once as a red herring. Try to work out which one is which. However, the last two indirect statements do not contain the word "that" for the purposes of indirect statements. The second simply omits the word "that," which we're weirdly allowed to do in English. The third, however, is formed by an infinitive construction, where instead of the word "that" and a conjugated verb, there is an infinitive with no indicating word before it. The best method, therefore, to spot indirect statements is to be vigilant. Think about each sentence or main clause individually, and whether it is reporting the speech or thoughts of a being, to determine whether it is an indirect statement. How are indirect statements formed in Latin? Here is a sample Latin sentence, and here is its literal translation. Here is a translation of the sentence into good English. There are three important things to note here. The first is that Latin uses the infinitive version of indirect statements. This is the "I believe me to be good" version. The second is that the subject of the indirect statement is also in the accusative. And the third, as a logical point from the first and the second, is that word order matters in indirect statements. Beneath the previous Latin sentence is a poor Latin sentence. The word order is wrong. The meaning of the sentence is violated. Each sentence can be broken down into three main components. The first part preempts or indicates the indirect statement. It notably contains a conjugated verb at the rear. The second part contains the subject and the other content of the indirect statement. The subject is notably in the accusative and comes before all other nouns in this section. If the intended subject is not in the right position, we can end up with a confusing sentence, such as the one on the bottom of your screen. The third part contains the verb of the indirect statement. It is always an infinitive. In the event that the verb can take an infinitive, such as in the example, the main verb of the indirect statement clause is always at the rear. If this word order is not followed, then confusing sentences can arise. Now we will focus on the nouns and pronouns in an indirect statement. Most nouns and pronouns work as one would expect in a normal sentence. The exception to this is the subject of the indirect statement. The subject is in the accusative. This first sentence is correct, however, this second sentence is incorrect. If you think about it, this is the same as in English. Our indirect statement construction treats the subject as an object. Take, for example, the sentence, I believe me to be good. This does work. However, I believe I to be good does not. The subject of the indirect statement must be in the accusative case for both pronouns and nouns. As I said before in the word order part of this video, the subject is the first word in the middle part of the sentence. A pronoun that is commonly seen in indirect statements is say. Say always refers back to the subject. It is similar to French reflexive pronouns. Je me lave, I wash myself. Myself refers back to the subject. Tu te lèves, you wash yourself. Again, it refers back to the subject. In Latin, it doesn't matter what person and number the subject is. The pronoun is always say. In the first example, say refers to Caesar. On a separate note, in order to negate an infinitive in an indirect statement in Latin, replace the verb dico, I say, if you are using it, with nego, I deny. If you are not using dico, then simply add a noun in front of the infinitive. In this example, say refers back to me, the subject. Now we move on to the most complicated and deep topic regarding indirect statements, verbs. There are many types of infinitive used in Latin. These are the 6 types. The future passive is not required for GCSE or IGCSE. They are used to vary the tense of indirect statements. In Latin, it is very simple. The tense of the verb remains in the same tense as the original indirect statement was. If I say, Marcus is unhappy, then in Latin the infinitive would remain in the present active. Note there is no passive of the verb sum. In English, however, we shift our tenses. We will focus on what happens in the past primarily. This is a table which shows the tense shift in English, when the reported statement was in the past. This can be confusing when translating sentences. I said earlier that Marcus was unhappy, although I literally said Marcus is unhappy. So if in doubt, try to imagine what the original statement was and what tense the main verb of it was in, and then translate the Latin infinitive into that tense, and vice versa. Thank you for watching this far through this video on indirect statements. I hope that you have found it useful.